WGBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Mathieu, back with another edition of Lunch Hour Live. As we join you from frigid downtown Boston this morning near Copley Square, we've got an extra layer on as we tell you a great story today about recovery and rebuilding with the mayor of Lawrence, Massachusetts, Dan Rivera, our special guest. Mayor, thank you for coming to see me at the library.
Joe, thanks for having me.
And it's great to talk to you again.
My pleasure.
Of course, a lot of people are well aware that your community has been through a lot over the past year and change following the Merrimack Valley gas fires and explosions. And I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about that, and we might touch on politics a little bit.
Sure.
If you're joining us on Facebook, by the way, on Facebook Live, please like it, share it, comment, and ask questions, and we'll forward them to the mayor as we talk over the next half hour. You were in Boston yesterday at the State House testifying on some important legislation. We were covering it this morning on WGBH radio. And I'd like to ask you about your testimony because I think it surprised a lot of people. We've heard about a settlement with the utility Columbia Gas that was, of course, responsible
a couple of settlements
for what happened. That's true. Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But you made the point as you were testifying about legislation that would penalize companies for dangerous leaks in their infrastructure, that not a dollar, not one fine has been levied since the Merrimack Valley explosions over a year ago.
Listen, I think that part of the story I feel like I always have to tell is the human side of this. We're talking about 50,000 residents across all the communities that were impacted negatively. And so we want to see something happen to someone or to the company for the bad things that happen. And so the legislation that we had yesterday, we talked about the human impact. It was a gas disaster that had an incredible negative impact in the humanity that lived in that area. And I don't want anybody to ever think that this is just about gas lines, and this legislation that they have helps figure that piece out. And it's important to say that no one was fired and that no fine was levied, and that they still doing business as if nothing had happened on September 13, 2018.
Yeah. You've called for them to lose their license as well.
Yeah, and I think, it seems like a radical thing to do, but I think a radical thing happened. And so, if you run a business and somebody loses their life because of it, because of your negligence, and the NTSB has said now, so the report is out, that they were 100% negligent in that matter, then they should lose their license. It's not about punishing Columbia Gas. It's a little bit about punishing Columbia Gas. I won't be honest about it, but it's more important that the industry understand that you can't operate like that. That you have to be the most safe industry in the Commonwealth to have a license to operate a gas utility.
You, of course, have come an incredibly long way, getting people back into their homes, appliances replaced, lines reinstalled, roads repaved. There's a lot of great things to talk about when it comes to the recovery in Lawrence. But Mayor, when it comes to issues like this, over a year later, do you feel like you're yelling into the wind?
Well, I tell you, right about this date last year, I think we had begun the conversation that we weren't going to hit the first date.
Yeah.
So I think it was November 19th or November 20th.
First target date for
the
recovery.
First target date, and that felt really crappy. And so, think where we are today, where people are home with heat and hot water. People are just starting to turn off. They definitely turned the heat on today if they hadn't already. Yeah. And you're gonna get a lot of calls for service and stuff. But it's a battle that continues. I was at a conference, a pipeline safety conference, and the people of I think it's San Bruno, the town of San Bruno in California, who had a similar situation. They had a lot more people pass away from it. They're 10 years into this, and they're still fighting with the utility to get things right. And so this is a long fight, and I don't, however hoarse my voice might get, it's worth doing.
Well, there are a lot of good things to talk about, as I mentioned. When you look back to where you were a year ago, you just looked at your watch to remind yourself of the date. Lawrence was in a very different place. And you do have people out of trailers. You have people back in homes. And largely a restoration of service to where you want it to be. Maybe you can tell me about.
I think we're definitely in a better place. I think that the fact that we're talking about this legislation was very helpful because we want to make sure that they do belts and suspenders around this industry. The legislation the governor and the mayor and I were talking about were about making level 3 gas leaks as serious as level 1 gas leaks, and for all intents and purposes, when you get a level 3 gas leak, it's basically they'll fix it when they get to it. but level 1 gas leaks have to be fixed in a certain number of hours. And so having that conversation that we're going to make everything feel like an emergency changes the cadence of for the utilities. And I think that has helped us, progress. And I think looking back, it's just more positivity for us that there's more to do today than there's less to do today than it was when we were last year this time.
How's the assistance been on the state level? You've obviously spent a lot of time with Governor Baker. I suspect you've come to know each other fairly well because of this actual incident. You're a Democrat, he's a Republican, but you're working together.
Well, listen, we actually first established a relationship. Actually, I'll go back one further. When he was running for governor, he came and talked to the mayors, and I gave him a bunch of ribbing about public education. I was really less than civil with him. And then
less than civil.
Less than civil.
You're not going to tell us what you said.
I know. I'm not going to tell you. Anyway, I'm a public school kid. I take it very seriously, and it's something we have to leave for our children in a good state. Anyhow, in the end, we end up being closer together on education than we thought. But we really established our relationship when we had the blizzards in his first winter.
2015.
We had like more snow fell than can fit in, I think, like twice of Foxborough Stadium. And so, yeah, when it's cold, when the stuff is hitting the wind and you're trying to get salt or you're trying to move snow and you're trying to get contractors, you become friends real quick because you know you're in this together. And what I learned about Charlie Baker that day was reinforced when we had the gas crisis, and that, he wants to be the governor of Massachusetts, and he wants to make sure that every community is taken care of, Democrat or Republican. And he ended up getting a lot more votes in Lawrence the second time around than he did the first time, but I think it's because he really cares.
As opposed to just your endorsement.
Yeah, no, well, my endorsement probably has a little thing, but not as much as his work.
Talk to me a little bit about the human side of this. You alluded to it. I remember meeting you in your office at the year mark, and we had a bit of an emotional conversation. You have a way of bringing home the role of mayor that's different than any other job in politics because of that one-to-one relationship. I would dare say you know just about everybody who lives in the city of Lawrence, and if you didn't before this, you do now. They come to you, and they tell you their stories. You see them at the store. You talked about giving people a hug. That's not something you hear from a lot of guys who run cities, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, trust me, a hug is the easiest service you can provide to somebody in a tough jam.
Yeah.
But I learned that from watching great mayors. I watched, Mayor Menino, and even my colleagues that are mayors today. They've gone through stuff. We watch each other do that. Mayor Walsh, Mayor Kim Driscoll in Salem. We learn a lot from each other watching them do these things. And so, but when you're in this situation, you know that even though it's happening to you, that it's really you're the place where people are coming for support. So you have to make sure that you are taking care of folks in that way. But it was invaluable that I was also affected because when we were in these rooms, things would happen, and I told people, no, that's not happening because I'm affected and it's not happening to me. So X, Y, and Z is happening, the contractors are doing, and you say, no, I know because I've been in my house and it's not happening at my house.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly invaluable, but more important than that, to be able to tell people that we're going to get through it, that they're all in this together. And even today, people feel very lonely. When you have to evacuate your home and deal with these matters, it gets really lonely and sad about the prospects of the future. And so letting people know that, hey, that's okay to feel that way, but that we're here for you to support you, that we're in this together. And then long term, we're going to be better off. We had to take our baseball field and our basketball courts in and around South Lawrence and make them places where they had people to live in the RVs. But because we worked really hard and very smart, we were able to get the basketball courts up and running before the end of the summer. So kids were actually playing basketball on courts that had RVs short of the year mark. So we got that done, and we got the baseball fields. We would have them playing baseball, except you can't force grass to grow fast. And so, we could have done AstroTurf, but we're going to let it go. So in the spring, those places where we had, we're going to inaugurate these ball fields. We're going to put nice monuments to commemorate the event. But the job is important for people in those situations.
That's going to be something next spring. We should talk about that as we get a little bit closer. You also created a wonderful memorial to Leonel Rondell, of course, the young man who lost his life the day the explosions happened. by dedicating a street to him and essentially memorializing him in that neighborhood.
Well, he lost his life, but he's really the personification of what we all lost. We lost a part of our lives to this thing. The community lost a sense of security to this thing. And it was right and just and appropriate to do that. I mean, we create monuments to many things, and to the life of a boy who really hadn't really become a man yet, to something so useless and careless. We want to make sure people know that shouldn't happen again.
We're spending some time here on Facebook Live at the WGBH News studio at the Boston Public Library with the Mayor of Lawrence, Dan Rivera. If you'd like to comment or ask a question, please do. Like it and share it if this is important programming for you. We actually just got a question from our audience. And by the way, if you want to stop by and see us, there's a wonderful cafe here, and we'd love to get a chance to say hello.
The coffee is delicious.
It is pretty good coffee, by the way.
I'm not having a pastry.
It's also keeping us warm, nor I.
It is keeping us warm.
There's a question that ties into this, and it's what worries you when you go to sleep at night? I know you could answer that in a lot of different ways, Mayor.
Yeah.
But I remember the morning we woke up to news of a gas leak, another gas leak. It was just a few weeks ago, actually. And that's the kind of news that makes people suddenly fear the worst. They think they're going back into it. Is that what you worry about at night?
Well, listen, we worry about a lot of things because we do have a community of 85,000 people, a lot of newcomers to society, to American society, immigrant families that are trying to make their way in this world. And we worry about a lot of things, making sure people are safe. And, to have the knocking on the door and the bell ringing at 3 o'clock in the morning is an unsettling experience that that has only happened a few times in my time as mayor. And the thing is to go to sleep knowing that you have good people at the helm. Mm-hmm. We have a great fire chief and a great police chief, the staff that runs the city. I know that when something goes bump in the night, those guys are ready to jump in and make things quiet and okay for everyone. And we had to, I think it was close to 300 families got put on the street that night.
Yeah.
And unlike the first event, where it happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, people were already dressed and in their cars and out of their houses. People were in bed. I felt like the shelters were more full of people because it was such an immediate thing. And so we worry about it, but I think that we go to bed every night knowing that we have good people in Lawrence. And I think, unfortunately, what happened in September of last year has made us a little bit more, has made us less complacent. So even people in their houses are prepared for more because the absurd already happened.
Wow. How could you then, if you were to describe where you are in this ballgame, or maybe on a percentage level, how far has Lawrence recovered and how much is left?
Listen, if I hadn't had a conversation with the town manager of San Bruno, who had this happen to her while she was in charge, I would have thought that we were a lot farther along. I mean, they're into this 10 years, and it is as raw for her in these discussions as it was for me in these discussions. So listen, we're going to fix the street. Just did a bunch of streets this year. The parks are back to normal. We're probably going to get half of the paving done in 2 years, all of it done in 4 years. We have to do that by contract. We have the money for all that stuff. We have all kinds of shiny new stuff. It's going to feel that the last scars of this thing are going to go away. But I think in our hearts and in our minds, it's going to be a longer time than that. I think we're not even in the halfway mark.
Not at the halfway mark?
Yeah.
That morning that we just talked about.
I would tell you that, it'll feel more like a win. Again, because the lawsuit is coming, it came through, and it's done, and they settled it, and they're doing the class action lawsuit money. Mm-hmm. It's going to make people feel yet unfulfilled, because you're going to have to tell people why you deserve money again, and it's going to feel like the process of the claims process.
Yeah.
And people are going to come away from that unsatisfied, and it's going to feel like, again, another insult. Mm-hmm. Only something like removing the license for Columbia Gas, I think, will push us past that point. People will feel like some vindication, some justice.
So are you talking about an emotional recovery or a physical one or both?
It's both, man.
Yeah.
The emotional is physical in lots of ways. And seeing the streets fixed emotionally lifts people.
Sure.
Seeing kids in basketball courts with their RVs emotionally lifts people.
Yeah.
But nothing keeps people emotionally down like feeling like you didn't get 100% of what you were meant to get.
The morning we just discussed, when you had the leaks a few weeks ago, people getting a knock on the door at 3 in the morning. Yeah. We were up there and talked to a lot of business owners who said this community has PTSD from what happened over a year ago. I wonder to what extent mental health services and counseling have been part of your reality in Lawrence as well.
Yeah, we've done a couple of things where people can come out and get some mental health help. The schools have been very important in that because the kids can find mental health in and around the schools, and parents are involved in the schools. So by proxy, that the parents can also access that through the community. What do you call it? The Essex County Foundation that has helped us a lot through the ways. Figured out a way to spend money on it. Mental Health Task Force has helped people. It's a big part of it. Yeah. The hugs. Is not just about greetings. It's really about telling each other we're going to be okay.
Mayor Rivera, there are a lot of things I could ask you about today, and I'd like to ask you about schools for a moment in Lawrence as well. It was a big story here when there was a state takeover of Lawrence Public Schools. This was many years ago now. You've been mayor since 2013, and there's been a remarkable success story. Where is the recovery at in that game as well?
Yeah. Listen, so a couple things about the schools is one is that we were the first level 5 school in the state's history where the state comes in and takes over the schools and the local control is gone. A lot of people meant that was going to be like a Philadelphia situation or Baltimore where they turned everything up. New York, no, not New York, but other communities where they turned everything upside down. The opposite. We were blessed with the leadership of Jeff Riley as the receiver. And he took us, as they say in this language, he met us where we were. A former commissioner used to be very fond of saying we could just throw everybody out. And I would always say, listen, you don't do that because it doesn't work. And you would have an army of people on the street against you immediately. I think the brilliance of Jeff Riley and now, in the recovery, the second phase, and Cynthia Paris, is that they are good at running a public school. But they're also really good at advancing people in the teaching and learning. And so when you wake up in the morning and you see somebody texts you, hey, Lawrence is in the op-ed of the New York Times, that usually doesn't end with a fun reading of the New York Times. But this day was when you find, and they're saying, if you're looking for a model to change American public schools, you can find that in Lawrence, Massachusetts.
And that has become a model.
100%. Yeah. And it's because we've extended the day, and it's because we've done enrichment programs for kids. We've taken serious the rigor of education. We have not been distracted with the kind of craziness that happens every day. But more importantly, and I think this is important to say, is that we did it with a union contract. Everybody thinks that we did away with the union contracts. There's a collective bargaining agreement that the union signed, that the school district upholds. And I think if you ask a lot of folks in the union, we ended up applying a lot of the things the union's been talking about to do anyway. And we call it the third way in Lawrence. It's not the union way or the charter way. It's the third way, where we didn't throw bodies at the problem. And so we do have charters running some of the public schools, but they're running it on public school rules. Nobody gets left out. You have to take everybody who comes in the door. The teachers can unionize if they want. All these things exist. We have education management organizations, which is a bad word for the most part. We make sure we hold them to account, and they're working in our community. And so it is what it's meant to be. All these things do the best we can for these kids, and we're seeing results.
When this all began, fewer than half of high school students were graduating. Where does that stand now?
I think the last time I looked at it, that we were inching up over the 80% mark.
80%?
Yeah, I think that's where we were for graduation.
That's many
and
multiples.
Dropout rate is out of the way. Yeah, because first of all, they went for the lower stuff, like the easy things. Kids who were not graduating for very small things, and then they went after the real important things. They're doing education academies on, the weeks that kids are going on vacation. Some kids go, and some kids stay and they do work. Education academy. One of the things we got from Governor Deval Patrick before he left was that he funded that, making sure that even though we are a fully immersion community, that to learn English, if you're coming as a Spanish speaker to learn English, you have full immersion. The Commonwealth voted that that's the rule, but you're going to give kids these options on the vacation times, and I think that's one of the things that now Governor Baker has seen to keep funding those types of things. And so, yeah, I mean it's it's remarkable when you focus on a problem and you let the politics out of the way, how you can make progress.
Mayor Rivera, one of the other questions we got from our audience here at the Boston Public Library is, are you involved in the debate over public transit in the state? And I'm not sure if there's anyone who is not, but your city, your gateway city as they call it, is a bit special here. We're talking about educating people. Of course, that means more people entering the workforce. And there are economic challenges for a lot of people who live in Lawrence who need to get to work. To what extent is public transit part of your ongoing debate?
Well, I can tell you one thing. If you move to Lawrence, you're not going to have any problem with traffic. That's only a joke, honestly.
So buy a car.
I'm only on the periphery, only in a lot of people that live in Lawrence and in around Lawrence come to Boston.
Yeah.
And, but what we try to do in Lawrence is get people from the businesses in Lawrence, which we have the biggest employing base. If you own a business in the Merrimack Valley or the greater Merrimack Valley from Lowell or Newburyport, the people that work in your business live in Lawrence. Lawrence is a place where people work. So trying to get people to Newburyport and to Lowell is important. So we rely a lot on the bus transit system. We just recently did a pilot. We're doing free bus, where you can get on any public bus in Lawrence that goes from a point in Lawrence to another point in Lawrence, and you can do it for free. Now, what that's helped out is, some lady sent me an email saving her $80,000 a month, not $80,000, $80 a month. You think it's only $80, Dan? At a $14,000 a year income, $80 is a lot of money, and so we're just trying to do that small things. I can't give them a check to make their life better. I can't lower their rent, but what I can do is make a service that is needed by everybody and make that something that's free.
Is that a permanent
And it's $250,000 for 2 years as a pilot program. My hopes is that people become so enamored with it that any next mayor after me would want to take it away would be foolish. And so it's an easy hit. We already subsidize transportation 70, 80%. Why not do the rest of it? And if you did that, first of all, it would force the quality of the transit. I know a lot of people disagree with me with these. But it would force the quality to go up because everybody would have to use it, and then everybody would use it.
If I dare ask you about politics, a lot of the theme of this conversation has been removing politics from problem solving, but of course we're in the middle of an election season here. We're about to get into the silly season with the primaries starting in a couple of months. We not only have a presidential race underway, but we have an important Senate primary underway, and I know that, Mayor, you've been a very busy surrogate for the Democratic Party over the past couple of years. In fact, I met you at the Democratic Convention in 2012. I guess that was 16, now that I think back to that. Will you be back on the trail actively this year?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm thrilled about my senior senator becoming the president of the United States. I love Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren.
If you've not had a chance to see our great senator one-on-one talk about her experience in life, you're really doing yourself a disjustice because she has felt the economic insecurity that a lot of us are feeling today. They say, well, Dan, she's also a Harvard professor and she got millions of dollars. I go, she wasn't born that way. I was born thinner, and I'm a different person today. She was not born in that place that she is today, but her experience, listen to the story about the dress and her mom. It'll make the hair on your arm stand up. And that's why I think she's gaining ground in Iowa and in New Hampshire. And then she's making the plight of African Americans in this community a front piece of business in this election. With my favorite junior senator, although he's probably the senior of the two, Ed Markey. I think he's done great. Let me tell you, when in the darkest hours for Lawrence, Ed Markey was there, just like the governor was there. You can't lie to Congress. You're not supposed to lie to Congress. I think we may find out different in the next couple of days here. But they brought the Congress to Lawrence, and they had a Senate hearing in Lawrence, and that was 100% Ed Markey who did that, and got Columbia Gas on the record about things they were going to do and things that they weren't going to do. They said, we're not sure that we're not going to ask for a rate increase. They were on the record saying they might ask for a rate increase, and we can't believe it. They were on record saying that they weren't going to fire anybody for this. They were on the record for saying they were going to keep getting their pay. These are tough questions asked by the senator that day. I'm not sure the last time the Senate ever came to Lawrence. And his dad went to Lawrence High School, and that's not why we're supporting him, but we're supporting him because he's been a leader for us. Listen, we need every person on the campaign trail trying to get Donald Trump out of office because elections matter. I was brought into office on 81 votes, And not because I have this grandiose feeling that I'm a great person, this great leader, all this stuff, because we had a problem in the office, and we went to the polling place, and we changed it by voting. And so they gave me an opportunity to change the situation in Lawrence. We went to the polls in 2016, and they sent a very clear message that business as usual is just not going to hack it for people. Lots of people went and voted in the primary for Bernie Sanders, and in the general elections voted for Donald Trump. I feel like the electorate is telling us they want to break the window of government as usual. And you can't do that tiptoeing up to it and being middle of the ground. You know, you have to have some experience too to run. I think Amy Klobuchar said if Pete Buttigieg was a woman, he would not even be considered in this race.
Yeah.
I think that's 100% true. Marty Walsh wakes up every day with more people under his authority than Pete Buttigieg, even if you double what he has in his city. And I would vote for Marty if he ran for president. He's like the only one in Massachusetts
who's not running.
It.
Yeah. Two quick follow-ups on that. In terms of the presidential campaign, I think you largely answered it. But the knock on Elizabeth Warren from people like Joe Biden and Mayor Buttigieg is she's going to win primaries, but she can't beat Donald Trump in a general election because she's too far to the left. You need a middle-of-the-road candidate. You're saying that approach doesn't win either.
So I went to a meeting for Hillary Clinton before the elections last year to talk about the urban the big urban mayors. And it was the weekend that she fainted and her husband was going to stand in for her. Her husband was going to be the one talking to us because she had stuff to do, but when she got sick, he went and stood up in for her, and we got the campaign staff. And they couldn't answer the fundamental issue around the uncertainty around money the people were having, the economic issue, the economy stupid. And so we knew there was something amiss about it. And then you take all the other things into account. But more people voted against Donald Trump than voted for him. And, you know, I think this country is kind of going to do that same thing. If you can rely on those same votes because of different reasons, and plus they say you add some because of the conduct of the current president, and then you take the fact that some of these people are going to stay home because of the contact of the current president. Yeah. I got to think that's a winning solution there. Plus, we shouldn't go to the polls with the lowest common denominator. We should go with the greatest hopes. That's why we elected Barack Obama. Remember, nobody thought we'd ever elect, well, people of color never thought we'd elect a black president this soon, especially not before a white woman. There's a level of hope that we have to have in this enterprise. And no one else is bringing that hope to the table like Elizabeth Warren. Not Kamala Harris, not the other people of color in the race, because they're doing old school politics. It doesn't work. It's broken. That whole process of big fundraisers and gotcha moments and all this other stuff, it's gone. It's the era of the selfie. Like, you got to get close and personal. And the selfie's not about the picture, by the way. She's getting notes. Personal accounts when they shaking hands, they're giving her notes about their personal plights. Yeah. And I think people are emotionally attached to those instances in ways you can't buy by buying TV ads, and in ways you can't get by talking bad about other candidates. You have to earn those things, and if she can be the nominee, she's going to win people over. And then also, shame on us if we send this current president back for another 4 years. The Republic will be okay. But, you know, we all have to hang our heads for decades to say that we let this thing happen another term.
Well, and lastly, on the Senate race, you're clearly supporting Ed Markey for his reelection. He's being challenged by a very well-known and well-funded, I presume, politician in Congressman Joe Kennedy. There's so much talk, Mayor Rivera, about generational change, and we've seen some insurgent campaigns bring that change.
Yeah.
Is this not a scenario like that? Obviously, you're supporting Ed Markey.
Yeah, no, I think that if there was a moment, a snapshot, a foul, you could say, you know, that thing that Ed Markey did is an example of how out of step he is. There could be a case for that. But I don't think anybody can say that. I don't think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez supports a guy for Senate who's out of step with the generational change. Yeah. I don't think that Rachel Rollins here in Boston supports an Ed Markey if he's out of step with the generational change. But but then there's change just for change's sake, and I don't think that that's good either. There's work to be done, and can every hand be at the work that they're good at and can be effective at in those moments? And so, I just think that it is the generational change we need. We'll take an old guy at the helm with this, and I think he's going to be fine.
Mayor Dan Rivera, thank you for this conversation, for all the work that you've done in the gateway city of Lawrence, and congratulations on having a story of recovery and rebuilding. And I know it's still underway, and we'd like to stay in touch with you, and I'd like to meet you on that ball field in the spring when those kids are
we're going to
ball.
celebrate. It's going to be a big deal. It's funny because we want to commemorate.
Of course.
And we're going to celebrate it. But it was a solemn thing that happened to us, and we just want to make sure we mark it in history. We'll invite you. Everybody can come up. We'll have a hot dog and watch the kids play.
That'll be a great moment. When you
be.
speak, it's very clear to all of us how personal this is for you, and I appreciate your comments a lot today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us and watching us here on Facebook Live. Thanks to everybody here at the Boston Public Library. As I mentioned, if you like this kind of programming, if this is important to you, please like it and share it so your friends on Facebook get a chance to hear this story. We'll have another edition of Lunch Hour Live coming your way here from the library. Stay with us on our Facebook page. Sign up for notifications so you know when this is happening. My name is Joe Mathieu. I'll see you back on the radio tomorrow. Thanks very much.
That's pretty cool.
All right. Thank you again.
No, thank you.